Hey everybody, this is Christian. Today I've got a hot topic for you. It's about CLI apps versus GUI apps. So terminal applications versus graphical applications. What's better? And honestly, I've never seen myself on the one side or another, because my philosophy is, in tech there is always the right tool for the right job, and that's exactly what this video is about. So in this video we'll unpack some of the fundamental differences between CLI and GUI apps, explore some of the strengths and weaknesses of each, and I will show you my workflow with some very specific tools and examples where I believe the one or another is better for. Of course, take this with a grain of salt here, because it is highly subjective, so feel free to disagree with my tool choices or even with my entire approach at all. I don't really care, but hopefully it helps some of you guys to find some inspiration or maybe understand a bit better how to efficiently and effectively work with graphical or terminal applications. Before we start with my favorite CLI tools, let me quickly show you one of my absolute favorite graphical tools, Akiflow, the sponsor of today's video, because Akiflow simplifies your entire project and time management by combining time blocking and integrations into one intuitive platform. You can organize your entire schedule and boost your productivity by just dragging and dropping tasks directly into your calendar. For example, I'm currently using this to plan my day whenever I'm working on my tech projects or making YouTube videos, just to keep track of all of the important things I have to do. And what I personally really like about Akiflow is that it seamlessly integrates into all of my other favorite tools, such as Gmail, Slack, TUIs, Notion, and so many more. And it consolidates all of your tasks from these multiple platforms into one central location for easy time and task management. This is really great for somebody like me who is working on many different projects at the same time. And what is also pretty cool in Akiflow, it has an AI co-pilot that really learns your habits and helps you to auto-assign tasks to save time. And it is also very flexible. You can customize many things in the platform, add morning rituals or cool down reviews. So if you'd like to boost your productivity and organize your tasks and projects, then definitely check out Akiflow. It's a great tool, and of course I'll put your link to it in the description box down below. Alright guys, so now let's get started. As you can see, I've already fired up my terminal program, because first of all, I want to explain why so many tech people prefer CLI applications over graphical applications. And the main reason for this is that CLI applications represent some form of direct communication with a system. So there is much less abstraction between you as the user and the system or the actions that you want to perform. So when you're typing in commands, it is a very precise instruction what you actually want to achieve, and you usually get an immediate and less filtered feedback. And that has several advantages. Like in my project directory, I've stored many different projects that are Docker Compose files, and for example, I want to find out in each of the Compose files where I'm using traffic labels. In a graphical application, I would have to go to this directory, I would have to go into each project, I would have to find where is a Compose file actually existing. So here probably I have to open this application and, oh yeah, there's no traffic label in here, so I can go to the next one. In a terminal with powerful Linux tools, I could just use grep, for example, to search for a text in a directory, and it's automatically searching all the subdirectories, finding all of the files in here and listing out the files where this text or the search pattern is located in. This is super, super powerful. And you can even combine these tools when you pipe this to another command. Like, for example, if you want to count how many occurrences there are, I can just pipe this to a WCL that will count all of the objects, so 25 objects. And I can even go on and, for example, search for this and just include the file name. And instead of piping this to a counter, I can pipe this to xargs, which is a small tool that takes the output of the first command as an argument to pass it to another command. For example, I could use an sed command to replace the existing traffic enable true and replace it with traffic enable false, for example. So I can replace with one single command any occurrences of this text here in any of the files of the subdirectory with something else. So you can see, if you would do this in a graphical program, this probably would take me like 20, 30 minutes, what I can easily do within just a few seconds in one single command. And for example, I can also show the output of all the files. If I pipe this to xargs bat, for example, which will print the output of the entire text file, so where the search pattern is found. And when you learn to use and combine these terminal tools and programs, you're just much faster and more direct when you want to make changes or you want to work with any system. By the way, this is also another great example where the CLI shines, and that is when managing remote servers. This is really where the efficiency and the lightweight nature of CLI tools becomes absolutely critical. So when managing infrastructure, I'm just doing this at my local device, but when I want to do that at scale, you just need to use these type of tools. For example, if I just want to know what is the uptime of one of my servers, I could just execute this SSH uptime command on my remote machine, and it's telling me, okay, my server is up for 24 days. Probably need to restart it at some point, or if I want to know what's the current disk utilization, I could also just use the df-h command. So you can see it's much faster, more direct, instead of logging into an administrative program and then going through menus to find out what is the disk consumption of my servers. And of course, what you can type into a single command can also easily script it and repeat it a million times. Yeah, that's the real superpower of CLI. This is automation. Because once it is scripted, you can schedule it, you can have version control, you can test it, and you can share it with your team. I'm also giving you some examples here. Let's go to my Ansible directory. By the way, Ansible, this is a powerful automation and configuration management tool. That's really interesting because it uses YAML-based language for their playbooks. For example, here is a playbook that I have created, which will query all of the running containers on my servers and will output some of these statistics about it. Yeah, and if I execute it, it will automatically connect to my remote servers. It will gathering all of the statistics and querying all of the containers. It will give me the output of all the existing containers. Here you can see some of the details. So it's really fast. Of course, that also comes at a price here. Yeah, I'm not telling you it is all great, yeah, because in order to use these tools and to be fast and efficient with your terminal, you just have to learn it, yeah. So the learning curve of many terminal programs might be a bit harder to climb at the first place because you need to memorize many commands, you need to understand the flags and all of the options, you need to learn the syntax and maybe shortcuts and so on. However, I think just in the recent years, this has become dramatically simpler because with the rise of AI, you can just describe what you want in a prompt and then AI translates this into the correct command syntax. And that's ultimately making the CLI more accessible than ever. It dramatically lowers the barrier to entry while still giving you the full power of the CLI. I just will give you a very quick example here. So you can see this is an output of the automation task and here you can, for example, see that I usually don't set any memory or CPU utilization limits for my containers because honestly, I don't think that's really needed here. But maybe, for example, I want to do this, but I don't really know how I would automate this, yeah? So I could use an AI prompt, something like create a simple command to add smart container CPU and memory resource limits to the, let's do it on the traffic prod 2 container. Let the AI figure out that on its own and just give it the last output of the terminal as context. So it has all of the information of the containers and where exactly they are running on. And then the LLM can craft a one-line command. For example, here it comes up with a simple Ansible automation command that sets the memory and CPU limits exactly on this container. So I can just run this here, and that will perform the actual change on my infrastructure. So you can still use all of the power of the CLI tools to have direct input and outputs, but it's a bit easier to consume when you use AI for that. But yeah, of course, I don't want to say that CLI tools and this way of working in your terminal is best for all use cases, because before you think I'm a complete CLI fanatic, yeah, let me show you where graphical applications are actually superior. And this is, I think, really important to understand, because in tech I see many people trying to force CLI processes or CLI tools into each and every scenario, even when they are genuinely not the best choice. I think it comes from a dogmatic belief that CLI is always superior because it is so great to work with this. But it is simply not true. There are entire categories of problems, even in tech, where visual representation and graphical interaction provide fundamental advantages, something that text-based user interfaces just cannot provide. Especially when you need to understand relationships between different elements or visualize more complex data. Just take Kubernetes, an incredibly complex system with many interconnected resources. It has pods, it has deployments, it has replica set services, ingress objects, namespaces, config maps. It's still blowing my mind, yeah? And understanding the state of a Kubernetes cluster or even a Kubernetes project, that isn't just about knowing that the resources exist, yeah? It's about understanding how they relate to each other. So which pod belongs to which deployment, in which namespace, and what service routes are attached to these pods, and what is the health status across the entire system. And terminal tools like kubectl, for example, are great to get some very specific responses. Again, terminal tools are great for this quick and fast interaction to query the pods, maybe in all of the namespaces, and oh, that's great, I know that these resources are existing. But I still don't know much about the relationship of all the resources. And then there are tools. For example, I will show you K9S, which is a TUI tool, a text-based user interface, that aims to close the gap between the simplistic kubectl commands and tries to provide you some overlay or some overview of your Kubernetes cluster. And you can see this fully runs in your terminal with shortcuts and commands. You can navigate through this menu. You can also describe some of these deployments here, for example. Here, drill into some of the details and stuff like that. And you can even use your mouse as an input, yeah. But what I really don't like at this tool, it still doesn't provide you much overview. I will show you another tool that is very similar to this. It is called Lazy Docker, and this is another tool similar to K9S. It's a TUI tool that gives you overview of your Docker containers. Yeah, even on my remote server, and I can select it. I can drill into logs. I can drill into stats if I know how to work with, if I know how to work with this tool. Again, I need to now look up the help. I need to remember the shortcuts for the commands. You can still use your mouse input here and there, but as you can see, this is really limited because it only has text-based input. This is, by the way, another great example when you want to have some overview of some graphs or stuff like that. Yeah, you cannot scroll left or right in this graph view. I sometimes just don't understand why people are creating these type of text-based user interfaces. By the way, I recently have written my own text-based user interface. Yeah, it's called Boilerplates, that you might have seen in one of my recent videos. Yeah, it's also kind of a TUI tool that gives you some visual output on the terminal, but it's of course not a real management application. And honestly, I also believe that Boilerplate CLI tool is great, but it's not the end of the road, because although this provides a better interface than just using plain commands, TUI applications still have a gap, and that is the text-based interface or the console that they're displaying the data on. And I just honestly believe for this type of use case, especially for visualizing relationships or monitoring, Graphical applications are just so much better. I will just show you an example with Portainer here. So this is another management application that I use for my Kubernetes cluster, and I can just intuitively navigate through these different menus to see the relationship of applications. Yeah, I can filter specific namespaces. I also can get some statistic like the memory reservation and CPU reservation of my entire cluster. I can directly see how many nodes are up and running. So this is, in my opinion, much better for this use case, especially here on my Docker Swarm cluster when I want to see all the different container stacks that are currently running. And I get a much better overview because I can see more elements on the same space. And I can minimize, I can zoom in, I can zoom out. That is what I cannot do with a text-based user interface. And I will show you an even better example, yeah. For example, for monitoring, there's this application existing that's called Bottom. And honestly, yeah, it's nice to look at this. I love terminal tools, I love terminal programs. But honestly, I would never really use this in a real world to monitor my server. In this example, it is just my local Mac, yeah? But just imagine I would have to monitor 10, 20, 30 different servers, and I need to scroll in, I need to zoom in or out of this monitoring graph. I cannot do this with a terminal tool. I will just show you my monitoring tool Grafana, yeah? So here, for example, if I want to monitor the metrics of my servers, I can open my dashboards, for example. Let's go to this here, and I can see at a glance what is happening on my virtual and physical servers here. And I can see a much better visual representation of what's going on. Also in monitoring graphs, for example, if I can see a spike here in the network traffic activity, I can zoom into this little clip here and I can much better see what exactly was going on here, what network interfaces were producing this traffic. And I can drill into all of the details of the memory and CPU utilization exactly at that time frame, so I can better identify what application was actually producing this network traffic, and maybe there was an issue with that. That is also true for logs. So if I want to drill into all of the logs that are produced on my system here, for example, you can see a lot of errors in the Grafana production server. So I can mark this specific time frame, and I can also zoom in and I can troubleshoot this particular issue and find out what is going on. Just imagine you would have to do this with grep or with a text-based user interface like this. It's completely impossible. So this is absolutely where graphical applications are superior. Well, I will show you another example. Yeah, for example, let's go to my N8N automation platform. This is where I'm currently start to automate some of my processes for social media content creation and GitHub merge request management. And of course, I just told you when we were talking about automation how great CLI tools are when it comes to automating repeatable task. And yeah, this is still true. Of course, you could write a Python script or a Bash script that does all that automation in a text-based form. But graphical tools are better for understanding more complex logic flows, so you can better follow the specific path and the decisions when these decisions are made, and can also troubleshoot at which point something fails. This is not really great in terminal-based automation tools, and here I absolutely love N8N because it gives you a much better insight into all of your pipeline. And this is where I just believe graphical tools are really great. By the way, you could also see N8N as kind of a hybrid thing, yeah, because you can still write code in here, and you can still use it to execute scripts, but it somehow lives in both worlds. Yeah, it has a graphical part that is great for seeing the connectivities and relationships between the different elements, but you can still drill into some of these specifics and create smaller scripts, even Bash, Python, or JavaScripts that execute some very specific repeatable tasks. So that is at the core what I want to tell you, yeah? And don't listen to these guys that will tell you, oh, you should always use CLI apps for just everything because CLI is better and you need to use tiling window managers, you need to use Vim and blah, blah, blah. I think everybody just need to find their own pacing, how to adapt to specific tools, and need to find their own sweet spot of when to use more intuitive graphical tools and when to use more direct and more quick and efficient terminal commands. So it really depends on the actual use case. And that is what you should always remember in tech. There is always the right tool for the right job. And that's my philosophy. But now you can tell me where I'm wrong and which CLI tool I should try out next. Yeah? And please let me know if you lean more towards one side or if you use a mix and match like I do. Just let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Thanks to all the supporters and members of my channel. You guys are just amazing. And I will catch you in the next video. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.